senators, and representatives, I have the distinguished honor of presenting.
Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where history comes alive. I'm Mr. Hutchings, and today we're talking about the very beginnings of British history. We'll be stepping back into Roman times, exploring the impact of the empire on the British Isles, and uncovering how this era shaped the future of Britain. So sit back, relax, and let's take a journey through time. Well, I'm beginning with Britain before Rome, which is about as far back as I am able to get, so I'm happy to share this with you. Before the Romans set forth in Britain, the British Isles had already experienced profound and cultural social development. The foundations of British society had been forming for over a millennium, with evidence stretching back to the Neolithic and early Bronze Ages. By the time of the Roman conquest in AD 43, Britain was home to a complex tribal system deeply influenced by the wider Celtic world. The sole characteristic of the Celtic world is the existence of the Celtic language. So, in this regard, the six regions in the world which are recognized as Celtic nations are Ireland, because of the Irish language, Brittany, because of the Breton language, the Isle of Man for the Manx language, Cornwall, the Cornish language, Scotland, the Scottish Gaelic language, and Wales, because of the Welsh language. Of these Celtic nations, Scotland has the largest population of Celtic people today. However, there are other countries in Europe which are recognized as being part of the Celtic heritage. And these countries include, of course, England, but also include Spain, Portugal, Austria, France, and Iceland. Celtic populations can be found in regions even outside of Europe today because of modern migration. So, now what does this mean? Well, Britain, though an island, was not isolated. They were a Celtic people before Rome and were connected to Europe just as authentically as many other tribes on the European the European continent were connected to each other. So, the Britain was home to a complex tribal system, both that was complex in Britain, but also had ties to larger Europe. And this influence was able to boast advanced craftsmanship, organized settlements, and extensive trade networks, not just in Britain, but really all over Europe. So, getting back to our early history, in the Neolithic period, which is about 4,000 to 2,500 years BC, marked a significant transition in human lifestyle as communities shifted from hunter gatherer existence to settling into farmed societies. This period saw the construction of monumental structures such as Stonehenge and Avebury, which indicate a sophisticated understanding of astronomy and ritual practices. These megalithic sites suggest that Neolithic Britons had an organized belief system and the ability to coordinate large scale labor. This reinforces the idea of a structured and cooperative society. Agricultural advancements during this time allowed for stable food production, leading to population growth and development of increasingly complex social hierarchies. Moving to the Bronze Age, which is about 2500 to 800 BC, further transformed British society as the mastery of metalworking revolutionized tools, weapons, and artistic expression. The introduction of bronze enabled more efficient farming, enhancing food security and supporting expanding communities. The Bronze Age also saw the emergence of chiefdoms, where powerful elites controlled resources and long distance trade. Archaeology finds, such as the treasures of Bushbarrow near Stonehenge, a burial containing finely crafted gold and bronze artifacts, demonstrate the existence of a highly stratified society. Additionally, Britain's rich tin deposits made an essential player in the European metal trade, with evidence of connections stretching as far as the Mediterranean. Moving into the Iron Age, which begins about 800 BC to AD 43, the Iron Age ushered in even greater social and political complexity. This was an area in which Celtic culture, with its distinct language, art, and warrior traditions, became dominant across the island. Britain was divided into numerous tribal kingdoms, each led by chiefdoms or kings who ruled over settled farming communities. Hill forts such as Maiden Castle in Dorset and Danbury in Hampshire functioned as political and economic centers, housing artisans, farmers, and warriors while also serving as defensive strongholds. The increased use of iron tools and weaponry allowed for greater agricultural efficiency and military capability, reinforcing the power of these Iron Age tribal leaders. I do suggest a visit to Maiden Castle if you're able to do it. Maiden Castle is located near Dorchester, stands as one of the largest and most impressive Iron Age hill forts in all of Europe. This ancient site dates back over 2,000 years, occupies a prominent position atop of a natural chalk hill, which gives commanding, expansive views of the surrounding landscape, which is beautiful, particularly in the spring and the summer. Visitors to Maiden Castle can also explore the complex network of ditches, banks, and defensive ramparts that encircle the site. The visitors can gain insight into engineering prowess and defensive strategies employed by the ancient inhabitants. Despite its formidable appearance, Maiden Castle ultimately fell to Roman forces during the conquest of Britain in AD 43, marking the end of its significance as a military stronghold. While in Dorset, I strongly suggest the coastal town of Poole Quay, situated in the south coast approximately 6 miles west of Bournemouth, and have a coffee at the old customs house along the sea to watch the ferry boats. It's really quite lovely. Then visit Shaftesbury, a stunning rural village where you can stroll Gold Hill, a street as beautiful as it will be steep to walk. The homes along Gold Hill are quite lovely, and I've always imagined what it'd be like to live in one of those ancient homes. And while there, don't forget to visit the town hall next to St. Peter's Church. Just lovely architecture. Okay, I guess back to my point at hand, my podcast. Despite Britain's geography, Britain was not isolated from the broader European world. Trade routes connected British tribes to continental Europe, facilitating the exchange of goods such as tin from Cornwall and lead from Wales for luxury imports like Mediterranean wine, fine pottery, and glassware. Archaeological discoveries include coins from Gaul, future France, and amphorae. Amphora is a two-handled storage jar used in ancient Greece and Rome for various purposes, usually transporting either grains or liquids such as olive oil or even wine. And these amphorae that were found in Britain come from Spain, and they provide concrete evidence of these trading interactions. And demonstrates that the pre-Roman Britons were integrated into a far-reaching economic network long before the Romans arrived. Religion played a vital role in the pre-Roman British society, with the Druids serving as an intellectual and spiritual leaders of the Celtic world. These priestly figures oversaw religious ceremonies, maintained oral traditions, and wielded significant influence in legal and political matters. The Roman chroniclers, particularly Julius Caesar, noted the power of the Druids, viewing them as both scholars and formidable authorities. The Romans later sought to suppress these Druids, particularly in their stronghold on the Isle of Anglesey, recognizing the role the Druids had in resisting Roman rule. Iron Age Britain was not merely a collection of scattered villages, but a land of organized governance, warrior elites, and intertribal diplomacy. Chariots, an integral part of British warfare, astonished Julius Caesar during his expeditions in 55 and 54 BC, as British warriors used them with remarkable skill and coordination. Chiefs and kings frequently engaged in alliances, conflicts, and power struggles, shaping the political landscape of the British island. However, all of this was about to change with the arrival of Rome. The Roman Empire, with its disciplined armies, advanced infrastructure, and structured administration, would impose new laws, new technologies, and new cultural influences that would redefine Britain for centuries to come. So finally, Rome comes to Britain. Rome's interest in Britain long predated Emperor Claudius's full-scale invasion in AD 43. The British island had been on Rome's radar since Julius Caesar's expedition in 55 and 54 BC. Though Caesar did not establish Roman rule, his encounters with British tribes laid the groundwork for future conquests and reinforced Britain's strategic and economic significance in Roman eyes. Julius Caesar's initial foray into Britain in 56 BC was largely an exploratory mission rather than a decisive military campaign. He landed with 2 legions, roughly 10,000 men, near the southeastern coast, likely at Deal, but faced immediate challenges. The Britons, who had been forewarned of Julius Caesar's arrival, fiercely resisted Caesar's landing, forcing the Romans to fight their way ashore. Logistical difficulties, including rough seas, damaged Caesar's fleet and his lack of supplies. This forced Caesar to withdraw after a brief show of force. Undeterred, Caesar returned in 54 BC with a much larger force, 5 legions and around 2,000 cavalry. This time, Caesar advanced inland, defeating the Cantiluni, and I'm going to mispronounce a lot of ancient names, so forgive me, but if you do want to complain and correct me, leave a note in the comments. So when Caesar got into the island, he actually got on shore. He defeated the Cantiluni, the dominant tribe in the region led by, I'm going to do this one terribly, Cassivellanius. I did my best. Despite Caesar's military success, Caesar withdrew after securing tribute agreements and hostages from local leaders, as unrest in Gaul required Caesar's attention. Although these expeditions in Britain did not result in permanent Roman occupation, these expeditions did mark the first direct engagement between Rome and Britain, embedding the British island in the Roman imperial mindset as a future target for conquest. For the Romans, territorial expansion was not merely about military conquest, but a divine mandate to bring civilization to what they saw as barbarian lands. Roman ideology framed conquest as a mission to impose order, governance, and infrastructure on the peoples they subdued. Britain, located at the edge of the known world, represented both a military challenge and an economic prize. Britain's natural wealth, including vast deposits of tin, essential for making bronze, and lead, used for plumbing and construction, and gold, made Britain an attractive target. Additionally, Britain's fertile lands provided grain, livestock, and other agricultural goods that could support the growing demands of the empire. In short, Britain represented a great, vast amount of wealth to Romans. By the time the Roman Emperor Claudius launched his invasion in AD 43, Rome had spent decades gathering intelligence and preparing for a large-scale military campaign. The invasion force, estimated at around 40,000 troops, consisted of 4 Roman legions: Legio II Augusta, Legio IX Hispania, Legio XIV Gemina, Legio XX Valeria Victrix, along with thousands of auxiliary soldiers, cavalry, and logistical support personnel from across the empire. The Roman navy played a crucial role in securing supply lines, preventing a repeat of logistical failures that had plagued Caesar's expedition. Emperor Claudius was determined to win Britain. One of the strongest resistances came from the Catulivni, the dominant tribe in the southeastern Britain, led by Caractacus and his brother Togodumnus. Feel free to correct those pronunciations in the comments. The Romans faced stiff opposition as they advanced inland, particularly during the Battle of Medway, believed to be at the River of Medway in the English county of modern-day Kent. At the Battle of Midway is where British warriors, using hidden run tactics and knowledge of the local terrain, attempted to halt the Roman advance. However, the disciplined Roman legions, aided by their auxiliary cavalry and archers, ultimately prevailed, forcing the Britons to retreat. Caractacus continued to resist Roman rule, leading a prolonged guerrilla campaign before being captured in AD 51. Following the initial victories, Emperor Claudius made a highly symbolic entry into Camalduum, modern-day Colchester, the stronghold of the Cantiluni and the first Roman capital of Britain. The arrival of Emperor Claudius, accompanied by reinforcements and even war elephants, meant to showcase the Roman might. It signified the formal annexation of Britain into the empire. Over the following decades, Rome would extend its control further, constructing roads, constructing forts, and building towns, reshaping the political and economic landscape of Britain for centuries to come. Life under Roman rule, what was it like? Once conquered, Britain underwent a profound transformation under Roman rule. The introduction of Roman law, Roman governance, and Roman infrastructure reshaped the landscape of the British island, integrating Britain into the vast imperial system. Romanization took root, particularly in the south, where major cities and military fortifications were established. Governance and administration of Roman Britain. Following its conquest, Britain was formally established as a Roman province, governed under authority of an imperial appointed governor. This governor wielded both military and civil power, responsible for maintaining security, enforcing Roman law, overseeing tax collection, and implementing administrative reforms. The province was further divided into smaller territorial units, known as civates, which were based on pre-existing tribal boundaries. These were governed by local elites who cooperated with Rome, facilitating a smoother governance while maintaining a degree of indigenous authority. This administrative structure mirrored that of other Roman provinces, ensuring consistency in legal and economic policies across the empire. The integration of Roman law into British society marked a significant shift from traditional tribal customs. Roman courts and standardized legal procedures replaced localized forms of justice, bringing a more uniform system of governance. The establishment of written laws, contracts, and property rights helped formalize economic transactions and social relations, aligning Britain more closely with Roman legal traditions. Archaeological evidence from sites such as Vindolanda and Londinium being modern London, shows records of official correspondence, legal rulings, and tax records, highlighting the province's administrative sophistication. Rome also sought to integrate Britain's ruling class into the imperial system. Many Britons from noble families were granted Roman citizenship, a prestigious status that conferred legal rights and social privileges. This policy encouraged loyalty to Rome and allowed local elites to participate in imperial administration. Some Britons even ascended to high ranking positions within the empire, notably Tiberius Claudius Codimnus, a British ruler who granted citizenship who was granted citizenship and governed as a client king maintaining stability in southern Britain while fostering Romanization. Additionally, some Britons attained prominence in the Roman military, serving as officers in legions or auxiliaries, while a few elite individuals even secured positions in the Roman Senate. Through a combination of military control, legal reforms, and political inclusion, Rome effectively integrated Britain into its vast imperial network, leaving a lasting legacy on governance, law, and social structure. Urbanization and infrastructure in Roman Britain. One of the most striking legacies of Roman rule in Britain was the rapid development of urban centers, which reshaped the landscape and economy. The Romans established planned cities, many of which evolved from existing tribal settlements into key administrative, military, and commercial hubs. Notable examples include Londinium, now modern London, Campbell which I'm sure I said incorrectly, which is now modern Colchester, which I would also believe I pronounced somehow wrong. Vernalium, which is now St. Albans. That is another example of me probably mispronouncing a Roman word. These towns followed the typical Roman grid layout, featuring forums, which were marketplaces and civic centers, basilicas, public buildings for law and administration, and of course, temples dedicated to Roman deities, and amphitheaters for entertainment. Excavations at Londinium, for instance, have revealed evidence of large forum basilica complexes, an extensive commercial district, and Britain's earliest known amphitheater. A hallmark of Roman engineering in Britain was its extensive road network, which revolutionized transport and communication. The Romans constructed over 10,000 miles of paved roads, many of which still influence Britain's modern road system. Major routes such as Watling Street, linking Dover to Worcester, and Fosse Way, connecting Exeter to Lincoln, facilitated the rapid movement of Roman legions, merchants, and officials. These roads, built with multiple layers of stone and gravel, provided a durable surface that allowed for year-round travel, improving trade, efficiency, and military logistics. The Antonine Itinerary, a Roman document detailing road routes across the empire, highlights the strategic importance of these roads in maintaining control over the province. In addition to roads, the Romans introduced advanced infrastructure, including aqueducts, sanitation systems, and public bathhouses, which significantly improved urban living standards. Roman aqueducts and underground drainage channels brought fresh water to towns, supporting hygiene and public health. Bathhouses, such as the Aquae Sulis in modern day Bath, became central social and cultural institutions where people gathered not only for bathing, but also for business discussions, political meetings, and leisure. The Great Bath at Aquae Sulis, fed by natural hot springs, was a sophisticated complex featuring heated rooms, plunge pools, and a temple dedicated to the goddess Sulis Minerva, showcasing the fusion of Roman and local religious traditions. Through its cities, roads, and infrastructure, Rome left a lasting imprint on Britain, laying the groundwork for urbanization and connectivity that would shape the island's development long after the Roman Empire's withdrawal. Military presence and defense in Roman Britain. The Roman army maintained a formidable presence in Britain to suppress internal revolts and defend against external threats. Strategic forces such as Oberkrum, which is now York, Deva Vitrix, which is Chester, and Isca Augusta, Carleon, served as major military bases housing legions and acting as logistical hubs for campaigns against rebellious tribes. These fortresses were carefully positioned along the key transport routes and near hostile frontiers, ensuring quick deployment of troops whenever necessary. Ibucarum, for instance, became one of the most important Roman military centers in Britain, serving as the headquarters for Legio IX Hispania and later Legio VI Vectrix. One of the most significant defensive structures in Roman Britain is Hadrian's Wall, built in AD 122 during Emperor Hadrian's reign, stretching 73 miles, or 117 kilometers, across northern England from the River Tyne to the Solway Firth. This massive fortification marked the northern boundary of Roman rule. The wall was constructed with mile castles, small forts every Roman mile, turrets, and larger forts such as housesteads and vindula, where soldiers and their families lived. These installations not only served as defensive barriers against northern tribes like the Picts and Scots, but also functioned as custom houses and trade checkpoints, regulating the movement of goods and people between Roman controlled Britain and the unconquered lands beyond. Further north, the Antonine Wall, built in AD 142 under Emperor Antoninus Pius, extended 39 miles across central Scotland, marking an even more ambitious attempt to push Roman control deeper into Caledonia. Unlike Hadrian's Wall, Antonine's Wall was constructed mainly of turf on a stone foundation and was occupied for only about 2 decades before the Romans retreated back to Hadrian's Wall due to persistence from northern tribes. Roman forts along these defensive lines were more than just military outposts. They became thriving communities. Many housed soldiers, traders, craftsmen, and officials, creating self-sufficient settlements. Evidence from sites such as Vindula have revealed wooden writing tablets detailing daily life in these forts, including letters, supply requests, and personal correspondences, offering a glimpse into the experience of Roman soldiers and civilians stationed along the frontier. These military installations played a crucial role in maintaining Roman authority in Britain, providing both security and economic control. Their legacy endures, with Hadrian's Wall standing as one of the most iconic Roman structures in Britain today. Economy and trade in Roman Britain. Roman Britain played a crucial role in the empire's economy, supplying essential raw materials and agricultural goods while benefiting from extensive trade networks. The province was rich in natural resources, exporting grain, wool, leather, salt, and valuable metals such as tin from Cornwall, lead from Mendip Hills, and iron from the Weald and Forest of Dean. These materials were in high demand across the Roman world, supporting industry such as construction, metalworking, and military production. Archaeological, I always get that word badly. Archaeological, archaeology, archaeologists discovered at sites such as Mendip lead mines. These archaeologists reveal large-scale extraction operations with lead ingots stamped with imperial inscriptions indicating official Roman control over resource distribution. In return, Britain imported luxury goods from across the empire, bringing Roman tastes and customs to the province. Wine from Gaul, olive oil from Spain, spices from the Middle East, and fine pottery and glassware from North Africa and Italy were widely traded. Amphorae, large clay vessels found at sites like Londinium, and Comodium, Colchester, provide evidence of large-scale imports of wine and olive oil, catering to the Romanized elite and military garrisons. The presence of the presence of Samian ware, a type of high-quality red glass pottery from Gaul, in British settlements further highlights the integration of Britain into the broader Roman economic system. Oof, some of these words are a challenge. The introduction of standardized Roman coinage significantly enhanced trade and taxation. Pre-Roman Britain had used a mix of tribal coinage and barter systems, but under Roman rule, coins featuring emperors' portraits became the dominant currency. Mints in Londinium and Verulamium, which is now St. Albans, produced coins that circulated through the province, making transactions more efficient and reinforcing Rome's economic authority. The use of coins facilitated taxation, as the Roman administration imposed levies on landowners, merchants, and craftsmen, ensuring a steady flow of wealth back to Rome. Roman market towns flourished, with bustling forums and marketplaces serving as commercial hubs where traders sold goods from across the empire. Londinium, the largest city in Roman Britain, developed into a major center of commerce, with a port along the River Thames that handled goods from Europe and the Mediterranean. Excavations have uncovered warehouses, merchant stalls, and trade records, demonstrating the city's importance as a trading hub. In the countryside, villa estates emerged as symbols of economic prosperity and Romanization. These large rural estates, owned by wealthy landowners, produced grain, livestock, and cash crops for both local consumption and export. Villas such as Fishbourne Palace in Sussex and Chedworth Villa in Gloucester showcased Roman architectural influencing that featured mosaics, bathhouses, and central heating systems called hypocausts. These reflected the adaptation of Roman lifestyle among Britain's elite. These estates played a vital role in supplying food and goods to Roman towns, military outposts, and even markets beyond Britain. Many Roman sites in Britain, including these villas of the elite, can be visited today. Look in this works cited found in this podcast description for Roman sites in Britain from the Historic UK website, a history and heritage accommodation guide. And I would like to thank Ben Johnson for making the effort to share these sites with us. Through its vast trade networks, standardized currency, and agricultural expansion, Roman Britain became an integral part of the Roman Empire's economy, fostering commercial prosperity and cultural exchange, which would influence the region for centuries to come. Daily life and cultural integration in Roman Britain. Romans influenced profoundly life in Britain, transforming aspects of architecture, fashion, entertainment, language, and diet. Wealthier Britons, particularly those who embraced Roman customs, lived in Roman style townhouses called domus, or countryside villas incorporating advanced architectural features such as heated floors, hypocaust systems, intricate mosaics, and private bathhouses. Excavations at sites like Fishbourne Roman Palace in Sussex and Lullingstone Villa in Kent reveal evidence of lavish interiors decorated with frescoes and detailed geometric mosaics, reflecting the growth adoption of Roman tastes. Fashion also underwent a significant transformation. The tunic, a simple knee-length garment widely worn, while the elite adopted the more formal toga, a symbol of Roman citizenship and status. Archaeological finds, such as fibulae, they were brooches, used to fasten garments, suggest that Britons combined Roman and native styles in their clothing. Latin, the language of administrative law, gradually replaced the Celtic dialects in official contexts. Inscriptions found on milestones, tablets, and official decrees indicate that many Britons became literate in Latin, at least for commercial and legal purposes. Entertainment played a major role in Roman Britain, with amphitheaters and public arenas providing venues for spectacles that mirrored those in Rome. Cities like Londinium, Camulodunum, and Isca Augusta, Carleon, housed large amphitheaters where gladiator contests, animal hunts called no, I think I got that wrong. I'm trying to do the Roman name for an animal hunt, and I really do believe it's pronounced venetones. And if I'm wrong, do correct me. And these amphitheaters also had theatrical performances, which entertained both Roman and Roman settlers and local Britons. The remains of the amphitheater in Chester, which could hold up to 8,000 spectators, suggest that these events were a significant part of civic life in Britain. Religious and social festivals also reflected a blend of Roman and native traditions. The Romans introduced their gods, such as Jupiter, Mars, and Minerva, alongside local deities, leading to a fusion of beliefs. The temple of Sulis Minerva in Aquae Sulis, modern day Bath, is a prime example of this cultural integration, where the Roman goddess Minerva was worshipped alongside the native goddess Sulis, illustrating the merging of religious practices. Public feasts, Saturnalia celebrations, and local harvest festivals allowed both Roman and Britons to participate in shared traditions, strengthening cultural ties. Food and dining habits also evolved, with new ingredients and cooking techniques introduced from the Mediterranean. Olive oil, garum. Garum is a fermented fish sauce, and there's a pretty good modern equivalent. Almost any Asian um, store that carries fish sauce. Fish sauce is a pretty close approximation of what garum was. It's really pretty amazing. Um, Salty and high in umami flavor. All right, I personally like it. But olive oil, garum, wine, figs, and exotic spices became part of the elite cuisine in Britain, as evidenced by food remnants found in Roman settlements. Pottery shards, amphorae, recovered from sites like Vindolanda and Londinium, suggest that imported goods were common in wealthier households. Meanwhile, traditional Celtic foodstuffs such as barley, pork, and dairy products remain staples among the general population, creating a hybrid culinary culture. Through architecture, fashion, entertainment, language, religion, and diet, Roman rule deeply influenced daily life in Britain, blending Romans' customs with native traditions to create a Romano British identity that endured even after the Roman Empire's withdrawal. Religion and belief systems in Roman Britain. Religion in Roman Britain was diverse, reflecting a blend of native Celtic traditions, Roman deities, and later Christianity. The Romans followed a policy of religious syncretism, allowing local gods to coexist with the official Roman pantheon. This resulted in the fusion of religious practices seen in temples and altars across the province. Jupiter, Mars, Minerva, and Mercury were among the most widely worshipped Roman gods, with temples dedicated to them in major towns such as Londinium, London, Camaldonium, Colchester, and Verulamium, St. Albans. One of the best known examples of religious blending is the worship of Solis Minerva at Aquae Sulis, modern Bath, which I've mentioned earlier. The hot springs at Bath, long revered by local Britons, were associated with Sulis, a native goddess believed to have healing powers. When the Romans arrived, they identified Sulis with their own goddess Minerva, constructing a grand temple complex and a bathhouse around the springs. The site became an important pilgrimage destination, attracting visitors who left curse tablets, uh, deficitions, inscribed in Latin, seeking divine intervention for personal grievances. The imperial cult, which deified emperors and reinforced loyalty to Rome, was actively promoted in Britain. Temples honoring deified emperors, such as the Temple of Claudius in Camaldonium, were built as a way to integrate the local population into Roman political and religious life. Public ceremonies and sacrifices were performed to honor the emperor, strengthening the ideological link between Roman rule and divine authority. As the empire progressed, Christianity began to take root in Britain, particularly from the late 3rd to early 4th centuries AD. The earliest recorded Christian communities emerged during this period, likely influenced by Roman soldiers, merchants, and officials who had converted to Christianity. By AD 313, Emperor Constantine's Edict of Milan legalized Christianity, allowing Christianity to spread more openly. archaeological evidence, including Christian burial inscriptions, early church structures, and symbols like the Shiro found in Romano-British towns, indicate growing Christian influence. Notably, St. Albans, Britain's first recorded Christian martyr. He was executed in the early 4th century for protecting an early Christian priest from being a human sacrifice.
This episode of Mr. Hutchings History is now streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and all your favorite platforms like Castbox, Podcast Addict, and Amazon Music. Tune in now.
So the story of St. Alban. There was an early Christian priest whose name is lost to time, who was found by pagan priests, these Druid priests, and these Druid priests had decided this Christian priest was an offense, and it was decided that this Christian priest would be a human sacrifice, so the pagan gods would be pleased, and this was the intention. Well, Alban, who was a relatively unimportant man before this, just a villager, learned of this, saw the Christian priest, and then made an effort to save him from being a human sacrifice. Alban had hid this Christian priest in his home, and when this was finally found, Alban instead offered himself instead of the priest for human sacrifice. He allowed the priest to escape. He took the priest's clothing and came to the Druid priests and said, instead of executing a good man, why don't you just execute me? Well, the Druid priests were very unhappy about this, that their intended sacrifice victim, the priest, had escaped. And the point of sacrificing him was that he was a Christian, and Alban was not their intended victim. Alban had converted to Christianity upon meeting this priest and housing him and learning from him. And so Alban offered himself. And the Druid gods, the Druid priests were very upset that Alban had interfered. So Alban, it was decided to be taken to the pagan courts, and the pagan courts would be the ones to judge him. And the pagan judge, demanded that Alban show his loyalty to the tribe and renounce his new Christian faith and renounce his new belief in the only one God. Alban kept refusing these demands to forsake the one and only God and to forsake the God of the patriarch Abraham. Alban would not convert, he would not go back to his pagan ways. So Alban was punished with execution, and the execution was by beheading. He was beheaded because of his unwavering faith in the one true God. The first Roman soldier tasked with beheading the faithful Alban was so impressed and touched with Alban's devotion in the face of death that this Roman soldier refused to execute Alban. So another Roman soldier was called forth, another executioner, a second one, and he was assigned the task to cut off Alban's head. And on Execution Hill, Alban was beheaded. And it is written that the second executioner, the one who did this deed, lost his eyes immediately at the cut of Alban's neck, as the eyes truly fell or popped from his sockets. So the executioner could not take joy in the death of this good man. The head rolled down the execution hill as it fell from the body and stopped. And where it stopped at the end of the hill, a spring of water miraculously appeared. Upon hearing of these miracles, the astonished pagan judge ordered further persecutions of Christians to stop. And the judge also demanded that they honor Alban's death, because truly this was a miracle and magnificent. And today, if you go to Hartsford, England, stands St. Alban's Cathedral, and St. St. Albans Cathedral is on top of a hill. The hill is Holy Well Hill. It gets the name Holy Well, the Holy Spring. It is named after this entire event, the Holy Well Hill. St. Albans Cathedral is on top of it, and near the cathedral is still an active spring that is ancient as far as anybody can tell. And this, according to the story, is the spring that God had come from nowhere at the site where Albans had stopped rolling, a true miracle of God that impressed the local people. If you're interested in such stories, to learn more of the transformation of Christianity, the transformation that Christianity had on Britain, consider reading Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People, first written in 1731. But if you go to my works cited in this podcast, you will find an edition translated into modern English that was published in 1991 and far easier to read. It's one of my favorite reads for such stories. But as it goes on, by the early 5th century, as Roman authority in Britain weakened, Christianity became firmly established. The spread of Christian doctrine and church organization led the foundation for Britain's religious transformation in the post-Roman era, including the later medieval church, and shaping the island's spiritual identity for centuries to come. Legacy of Roman rule in Britain. For nearly 4 centuries, from AD 43 to 410, Roman Britain was deeply integrated into the Roman Empire, leaving a legacy that would shape British history long after the Romans withdrew. The province saw the development of cities, roads, legal systems, governance structures, and cultural practices that influenced Britain's transformation in the early medieval period. One of the most enduring contributions was infrastructure, particularly the extensive road network. The Romans built over 10,000 miles of paved road, many of which, such as Watling Street, Fosse Way, and Ermine Street, formed the basis of modern British highways. These roads facilitated military movement, trade, and communication, enabling long-distance connectivity that lasted well beyond Roman rule. The presence of Roman bridges, milestones, and engineering techniques influenced road construction in later centuries. Urbanization was another major legacy. Roman cities such as Londinium, London, Camulium, Colchester, and Verlamium, St. Albans, introduced forum basilica complexes, administrative centers, amphitheaters, bathhouses, and temples that set the stage for future urban development. Many modern British towns and cities trace their origins back to Roman foundations. Some, like York, Boracum, continued to be significant centers long after Roman rule ended. The legal and administrative systems introduced by Romans also had a lasting impact. Roman law, with its emphasis on written legal codes, contracts, and standardized procedures, replaced the more fluid tribal systems of pre-Roman Britain. The influence of Roman governance remained evident in later Anglo-Saxon and medieval administrative structures, including writs, taxation systems, and local councils, savates, and coloniae. The Latin language left an imprint on British culture and the development of the English language. While Latin did not replace the native Celtic languages spoken by the majority of the population, Latin did become the language of administration, law, and the elite. Many Latin words related to government, religion, military, and infrastructure, such as street from strata, and wall from valium, and port from portus, persisted in the English language. After the Roman withdrawal in AD 410, the influence of Latin continued through the Christian church, manuscripts, and monastic education, particularly during the medieval period. Although Roman Britain eventually fell to Anglo-Saxon invasions in the 5th century, many elements of Roman civilization persisted. The construction of Roman-style villas, the use of coinage, the legacy of Christianization carried forward into the post-Roman era. The administrative, cultural, and architectural influences of Rome shaped the foundations of medieval Britain, ensuring the imprint of Roman rule enduring for centuries. Resistance and rebellion in Roman Britain. Resistance to Roman rule in Britain never fully subsided, as various tribes and factions continually opposed imperial control. While some Britons adapted to Roman rule, others fiercely resisted occupation through armed uprisings and prolonged guerrilla warfare. The most famous and devastating revolt occurred in AD 60 to 61, led by Queen Boudica of the Iceni tribe. Boudica's rebellion was triggered by Roman mistreatment of her family and people. After the death of her husband, King Presidius, instead of honoring his will, which left his kingdom jointly to his daughters and Rome, the Roman authorities annexed Iceni lands, flogged Boudica, and assaulted her daughters. In response, Boudica united several tribes, including the Trivantes, and launched a large-scale revolt. Boudica destroyed key Roman settlements, including Camulium, Colchester, Londinium, London, and Verulamium, St. Albans, burning them to the ground and massacring thousands of Roman settlers. Contemporary Roman sources, such as Tacitus and Cassius Dio, estimated that Boudica's army killed between 70,000 and 80,000 Romans and Romanized Britons during the rebellion. Despite their initial success, Boudica's forces were eventually defeated by Governor Suetonius Paulinus at the Battle of Watling Street, where disciplined soldiers, Roman soldiers, and disciplined Roman tactics overcame the larger but less organized rebel force that Boudica led. Following the rebellion, the Romans reinforced their control, stationing more legions in Britain and strengthening military fortifications to prevent future uprisings. Resistance continued over the following centuries, particularly in northern and western Britain, where the Brigantes, Suleres, and other tribes resisted Roman expansion. The Suleres of Wales, led by Caractacus, waged a prolonged guerrilla war against Rome before Caractacus was captured and taken to Rome in AD 51. The Brigantes in northern England periodically rebelled, prompting the Romans to maintain a strong military presence in the region. The construction of Hadrian's Wall in AD 122 under Emperor Hadrian was a direct response to continuous threats from northern tribes, particularly the Picts of Caledonia, now modern Scotland. Stretching 73 miles, the 117 kilometers across northern England, the wall functioned as both a defensive barrier and a symbol of Roman authority. However, pressure from northern tribes continued, leading Emperor Antonius Pius to push further north and construct the Antonine Wall in AD 142 in Scotland. This wall, the Antonine Wall, stretched 39 miles, 63 kilometers, between the Firth of Forth and the Firth of Clyde. Was even a more ambitious frontier, though it was abandoned within 2 decades due to persistence and resistance and logistical difficulties. As the 3rd and 4th centuries progressed, new external threats emerged. Saxon raiders from mainland Europe, Irish warbands, the Scotti, attacking western Britain, and renewed pressure from the Picts in the north stretched Rome's resources thin. The Roman military was increasingly focused on defending other parts of the empire, leaving Britain more vulnerable to incursions. By AD 410, the Western Roman Empire was in decline, facing economic instability, barbarian invasions, and political crises. In response to growing external pressures, Emperor Honorius famously informed the Britons, the rescript of Honorius, that Rome could no longer defend them, effectively ending Roman rule in Britain. The withdrawal of Roman legions and administrators left Britain to fend for itself, ushering a new era of political fragmentation. With Roman governance gone, Britain entered a period of power struggles and shifting alliances among local rulers. The arrival of new groups, particularly the Anglo-Saxons, led to a transformation of Britain's cultural and political landscape, marking the beginning of the early medieval period. Despite Rome's departure, the legacies of the Roman infrastructure, law, and administration continued to shape Britain for centuries to come. Further exploration, books, movies, and web series. If you're intrigued by the history of Roman Britain, one of my favorite periods, and you want to explore this fascinating era further, there are plenty of books and films and web series which you can see, both fictional and non-fictional, that bring this period to life. Please see my suggested list of works in the podcast description. So whether you prefer to grapple with novels, action-packed films, or in-depth historical documentaries, there's no shortage of ways to continue exploring Roman Britain beyond this podcast. The legacy of Rome and Britain. The Roman occupation of Britain ended in the 5th century AD, but its influence endured for centuries, shaping the island's infrastructure, language, governance, and religion. The Romans left behind a well-developed network of roads, cities, and fortifications, many of which remained in use long after the legions withdrew. Major Roman roads such as Watling Street, Ermine Street, and Fosse Way became vital trade and travel routes throughout the medieval period, forming the foundation of Britain's modern road system. Archaeological evidence shows that Roman towns like Londinium, London, Verulamium, St. Albans, and Epicorium, York, continued to be occupied and adapted by later generations. The Latin language, while never fully replacing native Celtic dialects, left an indelible mark on the development of Old English and modern English vocabulary. Many legal, administrative, and military terms in English, such as justice from justista, and governor from gubernator, and military from militaris, have Latin origins, a testament to Rome's lasting impact on British governance and law. The structured bureaucracy, taxation systems, and civic administration implemented by the Romans influenced later medieval governance, providing a foundation for feudal systems and centralized rule. Perhaps one of the most profound legacies of Rome was the introduction of Christianity. By the time Roman rule ended in AD 410, Christianity had become firmly established in Britain. Christian communities, churches, and bishops were present in towns like Londinium, Verulamium, and figures such as St. Alban, Britain's first recorded Christian martyr, symbolized the growing strength of the faith. In the centuries that followed, early medieval monasteries, such as those at Lindisfarne and Iona, play a crucial role in preserving knowledge, religious teachings, and classical literature throughout the so-called Dark Ages. Even after the collapse of direct Roman rule, Britain remained culturally and economically connected to the former empire through trade, religious ties, and diplomatic interactions with the Byzantine Empire and Christian Europe. Roman Britain had been a province on the frontier of a vast empire, and through new powers such as the Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, and Normans would rise in the centuries that follow, the echoes of Rome's influence continued to shape Britain's history. I want to thank you for joining me on Mr. Hutchings' History. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Follow me for more deep dives into history and let me know what topics you'd like to cover next. Until next time, keep exploring the echoes of history. And if anybody out there can help me with pronouncing some of these Roman British terms, reach out. Enjoy.